Okay, so I understand that I haven't played enough of this killer because this killer just came out on the PTB, so some of you will be very upset because I'm already making a video, the new killer sucks. It's not like I'm trashing every single killer in Dead by Daylight. The gameplay footage you are seeing on your screen is my first time ever playing this killer. And I understand that I play like shit because it's extremely difficult to understand how this killer's power actually works, which I'm gonna talk about in a second. I want to make it clear that I do not dislike this killer because I hate dragons and dungeons. There are many people who are unsatisfied with this chapter, and it doesn't matter how great this chapter actually is. There are people who dislike Dungeons and Dragons, and these people were complaining about this chapter and the new killer before the public test build even opened.
Are you serious?
I'm not one of those people. Yes, I got to tell you that I'm a little bit disappointed because I'm a very big fan of Stranger Things and I was expecting the Stranger Things version of Vecna to come into the game. I have never played Dungeons and Dragons because I got no friends. So out of sadness, I masturbated right before making this video. I came on top of my table and then I licked my cum.
Are you serious?
And now I feel much happier. I have to tell you that my cum shot wasn't as big as I expected it to be. But anyway, let's talk about the new killer Vecna. But before that, smack that subscribe button or I will smack your mom's butt. Okay, so thematically the new chapter is awesome. The new map looks absolutely stunning, especially the dungeon part. It looks unreal. I stole this footage from Otzdarwa's channel, but just take a look at how pretty this atmosphere is. I find the new survivor very sexually attractive, maybe because I'm into elf porn. Vecna has some of the coolest animations in the game, so for the non-D&D fan, I expected much less. I didn't expect this chapter to be anything special, to be honest, and this has pleasantly surprised me. I wish I could keep this video positive, but not everything is perfect, especially when it comes to this PTB. There are so many glitches and bugs. I mean, there's a reason this is a public test build, but I will never understand how the developers didn't notice the bug which doesn't allow me to read a full description of Vecna's power and a full description of his perks. It's a very frustrating bug. And speaking of Vecna, this killer has a power which is extremely difficult to understand. Most killers in Dead by Daylight have very simple to explain and understand powers. For example, Trapper just places traps, Doctor shocks survivors and makes them scream, Xenomorph is able to teleport and shoot out of his tail. You get the idea. But Vecna is very complicated and it's not a good thing in my opinion. Yes, I understand that Dead by Daylight developers can allow themselves to add extremely complicated killers into the game since there are 30 plus killers to play and beginners can choose to play any of the easier killers. I like the variety in Dead by Daylight. But to tell you how complicated this killer actually is, this killer has 4 spells. Each spell does something different. For example, there is a spell which creates this big bubble only visible to you, invisible to survivors, and if survivors get into the range of this bubble, then their position will be exposed to you. Another spell is very similar to the power of the artist, but it's a little bit weaker than the artist's power in my opinion. Just like with the artist, you can place the projectiles in front of you. It's like a line of projectiles and then you shoot at survivors, and if these projectiles hit the survivor, that survivor will get injured. It sounds strong on paper, but in reality this spell is very disappointing. Survivors can avoid it by crouching very easily, and it's very easy to avoid these projectiles. When I played Vecna, most survivors just crouched and there's a delay between placing these projectiles and shooting them. You cannot just place and shoot them immediately, so survivors can just look behind and see that these projectiles are standing behind them. They crouch and they easily avoid these projectiles. Not to mention that these projectiles will not be accurate from far distances. From what I have seen, they work better from very close range, and most of the time if survivors are very close, you can just M1 them, so there's no need to use these projectiles, there's no need to use this spell, except if the survivor is behind the pallet. Then you can think of this spell as the xenomorph's tail, so then it's pretty useful. Another spell allows you to block the pallet, so survivors cannot drop the pallet for like 4 seconds, but in reality there are so many loops that are big loops, and it takes at least 6 seconds for most survivors to loop you around, and you can block that pallet for like 4 seconds, that's right, but by the time survivor comes around the loop and reaches the pallet again, that survivor already will be able to drop the pallet. So I think that 4 seconds of blocking duration is a little bit too short and disappointing. The coolest thing about this spell is that you are able to temporarily lift up a dropped pallet, or I think you can break the pallet. I'm not too sure about that, I haven't tried it yet, but I know that you can lift up a dropped pallet to reach the survivor easier, and this is a very cool thing, and with some add-ons you can make this spell even stronger. And my favorite spell is the spell which allows you to fly very fast. It's like a prolonged dash. You can dash for a pretty decent amount of time actually, and you're very fast. You can reach to a survivor which is very far away very quickly. You can reach to a generator which is on the other side of the map extremely fast, and I really like this. You might think that this spell is overpowered because theoretically you could dash at a survivor and then reach to that survivor and just M1 that survivor without any possible counterplay. But in practice, this scenario is impossible. You see, every single spell, except for the one related to pallets, is extremely sluggish. And even though these spells are very strong and they have a potential to make this killer just as strong as the nurse, this killer is very weak because of sluggishness and extremely long cooldown times. For example, imagine you are chasing a survivor, and the survivor is a very good chaser, so you want to chase someone else. But what is the point of flying across the map and finding another survivor if it takes like 3 to 5 seconds for you to recover from the flying stage and to be able to hit the survivor? Like literally, whenever you stop flying, even if you are very close to that survivor, you cannot immediately hit that survivor. You need to wait for at least 3 seconds so that survivor is able to reach another pallet or another window. Now, removing this cooldown wouldn't be a solution because it would make this killer overpowered. You could just fly across the map and then hit a survivor immediately without any possible counterplay. So in my opinion, to remove the sluggishness and to make this spell more useful, developers should reduce the cooldown time to like 1 second. Because the idea of spells is cool, but sometimes when I play this killer, I feel like using these spells, using my own power, puts me in a disadvantage. Sometimes I feel like I better play like an M1 killer, and then I'm thinking, why the fuck am I even playing this killer in the first place? Developers should encourage us to use these spells as much as we can to win, instead of limiting us by these insanely long cooldowns, sluggishness, and yeah, it's very complicated. The reason why I don't like the fact that this killer is so complicated is because, first of all, this killer has a very high skill ceiling. It means that it will take thousands of hours to truly master this killer. And I can see the same issue that the Singularity, the Knight, Sadako, and the newer killer, the Unknown, has. These killers are very hard to master, and not many people are willing to put so much of time into these killers to master them. More casual players will always choose a different killer. Like me, I will choose Michael Myers, Legion, you know, easy to understand, simple killers. And how many of you will be playing Vecna consistently? Now, I feel like some of you will be like, oh my god, this is my favorite killer, I will main this killer. Give yourselves a few months and then tell me if you're still enjoying playing Vecna, because I feel like this killer is very hyped up right now, but in a matter of a few months, this killer is gonna die down. I don't like learning all of these spells from beginning, because developers have done a pretty poor job explaining every single spell, so I just jumped into the game, I read this killer's power, and I couldn't understand shit. It took me a few hours to really understand what is going on with this killer's power, but maybe it's just me, I'm speaking from my personal experience. I know that some of you will be a faster learners, and good for you, man. If you like this killer, good for you. I love this killer thematically. I love the new map. I think the chapter overall is pretty good, but this killer needs a lot of work, and this game is broken as fuck, that's what I have to say. Anyway, comment your opinion. I will read my comments just to know what you think about the newest chapter, and I will see you in my next Dead by Daylight video. Bye.